Hi, everybody. It's Katie again, here with another episode of the Rise podcast. I'm so happy and grateful that you're tuning in for another episode to this wonderful space where I can talk to some really inspirational women and get a big boost of joy and confidence and just, how they've lived their life. So we all get this inspiration for ourselves. And today I am joined by another wonderful woman. I'm so happy that she's agreed to have this chat with me today. Her name is Alison Blackler. And she's just awesome. We've worked together a couple of times thus far, and she's also going to be one of my speakers in my women's event in October for Rise. So Alison, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm delighted to be here and can't wait to see where our conversation goes.
Absolutely. And they always go to really weird and not weird, but interesting places, shall we say. So for those of you out there who don't know Alison, I will let you tell the world all about you and who you are and what you do.
Oh, thank you. So my name's Alison. I run a business called Two Minds, and I have been focused on the human mind for probably nearly 30 years now. Obviously, I've been focused on my human mind for a lot longer than that, but I've been training over a period of time in various types of mind preparation, if you like. So I'm a therapist, I'm a coach, I've just studied NLP, I've done all sorts of different kind of things. But I think one of the things that I like to talk about is that my own journey has massively been running parallel with all of my training. I set out to understand myself and then found out, wow, actually, this is my thing. So I love to share some of the challenges that we all face. I think you're the same, Katie. We like to be honest and say, me too. Yeah. And I've spent a lot of time working out how I can get to this point and sharing that in my various guises, whether it's an interview like this. I've written a couple of books, got a podcast myself, anything where I can just share some insights into maybe my own journey, whether that's professionally or personally.
Sounds amazing. And I can tell that you have been on a real journey with it. And I can imagine that's been fascinating. And I can imagine it's brought up stuff that perhaps has not always been the easiest to look at, in terms of your own life, especially.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that, isn't it, Katie, to say it's not always going to be easy. If you are going to be challenging some of the very deep-rooted, unconscious, often patterns and habits that we create through our life, through no fault of our own, through no fault actually of anyone else's, really, it's going to be tough. You're going to be fighting with yourself for a while, and you're going to be giving yourself a hard time. And for me, it's just being able to work out the part of the what, but also how are you going to do it? Because we often know, don't we, that there's things that we're not doing to our best of our ability, or that we're holding ourselves back, but we often get overwhelmed. I certainly used to when I was younger. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I think that's the bit we know is going to be hard, but it's worth it in the end.
Oh, absolutely. And I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, actually, and I said, nobody tells you how. You're quite right. It's like, oh, you should love yourself more. Well, these things are like great in theory. And, logically, you can understand them, how they're going to benefit you. But nobody really talks about how. And it's the how that everybody is searching for. So, I'm sure the work that you do with your clients is so valuable, because not only are you helping them to see, like you say, what is going on, why it's going on, but then now what? How do we switch this? And that's always where the real, I think, the meat on the bone is how can I help myself now?
I think so. And I think one of the challenges that we have, particularly now with the likes of social media and the internet, is there's so many things that you should be doing or that you think you should be doing, that actually it gets overwhelming as to, I need to be doing this, I need to be doing this, I need to be doing all these things, meditate, all these things that we're being told are good for us. But for me, it's each of us are personal, we're individual, and we need to work out what's going to work for you, because what might be working for somebody over here, and you're looking at them thinking, well, clearly need to do that. It might not work. So for me, it's really is the how. How are you individually, each person that's listening to this, are going to find a way to make themselves feel
Yeah,
full,
I
full.
totally agree with you. And also to know that it's not a one size fits all, but it's not even like, okay, well, I did this yesterday, therefore I have to do it again today.
Yeah.
Because I know in my own journey, like who I was yesterday is not necessarily who I am today. And so the practices and the exercises and the mindfulness, I may have to switch it up because I'm in a different headspace today. And that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
it really is. We're all this like messy, glorious work in progress, right?
Totally. There is no end to this. It is, you know, and for some that feels a bit, but for me, it's at lots of stages. You know, it's what's the stage, what's the next stage that you can get to that will help build you up, really. It's the main thing.
Absolutely. It's very clear that you're very passionate about what you do, which is, you know, I always say that finding that sweet spot in life where you are good at it and you're knowledgeable, but you also love it. That's kind of what everybody is kind of searching for. So, yeah. But I would say life isn't all sunshine and rainbows. So what's the biggest challenge that you face in the work that you're doing at the moment?
For me personally, in the work that I'm doing at the moment, I guess it's twofold, really. I think there's always that cliche around time. I think sometimes we have this notion, and I can fall into that trap just like anyone else, of I haven't got enough time to do all the things that I want to do. But working with that is part of what I'm trying to do, is because there is enough time. It's how you organize yourself. It's where you put your attention. It's making sure that you have time out, even though you're trying to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. But I think for me as well, it's I think we've said it, I'm under no illusion that there isn't always going to be new things for me that come up, whether that comes up just because something very old has reappeared or something has got triggered. You know, I think it's being very honest and authentic to the fact that some days you're going to feel a bit rubbishy and not really know why, or not be able to put your finger on it. So I think there would be the two things really at the moment that I'm sort of personally fighting with. Is I've got all these ideas, I've got these things that I want to do, and there's only so much that you can focus on at any one time.
Yeah, and you have to sleep for certain hours of the day, don't you? Which is, you know, frustrating.
Yeah, gets in the way of all this lovely stuff.
Too much to do. I have no time for sleep. No, I get it, and I think that we live in a society that pushes you constantly. Like, what's next? And like, you don't settle, and you should be hustling, you should be grinding. You know, always forward facing. But there is this awful pressure, and especially I think as women to. I mean, I am an absolute feminist, choose the core. But I think there is a real pressure on women to have it all and be all and do it all. And like you say, there's only so many hours in one freaking day. Like, and to get to bedtime and to go, yeah, but I haven't done this, this, and this. It's like, it can really make you feel awful if you let it, isn't it? And it's, I suppose, to be kind to ourselves. No matter where we are on that journey or what we're doing or haven't done, we still have to be kind to ourselves.
Definitely. I mean, one of my big tricks that I share a lot and talk about a lot about is exactly, will feed that idea of being able to notice what you have achieved, have a today list, not a to-do list, and actually feel like that you are going to decide what's realistic that day, make a good attempt at achieving that, and be able to give yourself that praise at the end, not go to bed with your list of things that you didn't manage to get round to, because in that you will have got round to lots of things, but that lots of thing might be that you actually took some time out, that you actually, you know, when I hear people say, oh, I can't do nothing, well, doing nothing is doing something. It's relaxing, it's taking time out, it's doing something that you enjoy. And when we get into that trap of thinking that that is nothing that we're doing, then we are in probably quite a dangerous territory, really, because we're not giving ourselves permission to just chill or to go and do whatever your thing is.
I've definitely been there. I've definitely, as a self-employed woman and a single parent, I've definitely been in that space of I can't just simply sit here and do nothing. I feel guilty. I feel like I'm wasting time or I'm doing something wrong. And it's been a real lesson for me to say that I need to look after myself, otherwise I can't even show up for anybody, you know.
Yeah.
But it was because I was getting, like you say, it was dangerous. I was getting to a point of real overwork and being frazzled and overwhelmed. Like, it was all just, I was coming really to the end of the road. Luckily, I was able to recognize it before I kind of fell off. But it is very, I think that it becomes almost idealized, the concept of being busy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we need to be mindful as well of, if being busy is to, I guess, what am I trying to say, to work against something. So if you're keeping yourself busy because you're not wanting to deal with something that's a bit uncomfortable, then for me, let's be mindful about that. What is the drive here? When I say to people, what's your driver for putting yourself out there all the time, for reaching out to others, for actually people pleasing, really is probably what most people are trying to do. Find out what that thing is that's driving it, because if it is guilt, or if it is, well, if I look like I've not got enough going on, then people think I'm not good enough or I'm not rubbish. That's rubbish. It's absolute utter rubbish. And I think for me to get to the bottom of that, and that was part of my journey, is I got to the bottom of what was driving my pushing and all the things that I was doing, so that I could then go, oh, okay, that's interesting. I don't actually need to do that, do I? No.
Yeah.
And then you can have your time out, and or just be happy that you've emptied your dishwasher that day, and just be happy if that's what happened, because the rest of the time you were looking after yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. So what do you think that people really misunderstand about you? Now, this can be professionally or personally or both, but do people come to you with a certain level of assumption before they've actually talked to you?
I think we all make assumptions, don't we, about each other. I would imagine that a lot of people think I've 100% got my mind, you know, I never have any worries, I never have any downtime, sad times, etc. I think people, you know, have watched me over the years and probably seen a massive change in me. So they will probably they'll probably quite surprised to hear that sometimes it's, you know, it's harder for me, or there's some old stuff comes up. I think one of the things that I spent a lot of time when I was younger feeling very misunderstood. So my parents misunderstood me. I spent a lot of time trying to kind of work out who I was, because other people didn't see who I was.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you've asked that question, because I think it's a bit of a red flag for me, that if I think somebody does misunderstand me, it does kind of bring up because I've spent years feeling very misunderstood, feeling very criticized, feeling very put down by people, because they couldn't see who I was, because for whatever reason they were feeling rubbish in my company. So it's an interesting question, actually, because I probably spend quite a lot of time either making sure people do get what I'm trying to do, or I'm trying to not worry too much if they have got me wrong, because I've spent years fighting with that pattern.
It's so true, isn't it? You know, we are designed as tribal beings, really. We are designed to be part of the group. And there is, you know, from a very neurological perspective, there's safety in numbers, right? So we don't want to be ostracized. We don't want to be on the edge looking in, because that doesn't feel safe. But at the same time, if you're compromising yourself to be part of the group, that's not healthy either. And it is, I think, surreal. I think that's the thing a lot of people do battle with, is who am I, and am I willing to allow myself to be who I am, even if it means other people don't get it? And not to compromise myself to make other people happy. And it is, I think it's an ongoing part of the journey. And I think it's different for every connection you have in your life. I don't think there's like I've got it now and I'm good. I think that there are always going to be people that trigger you to some degree.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's exactly what I am experiencing sometimes, is if I get a sense that somebody has misinterpreted what I've done, or misinterpret my intention, it does trigger an old thing. It's different. It doesn't have the bigger impact as it used to have. But I think that's the point, isn't it, with this, that we need to work out how and who and what we're going to be ourselves, without that risk of is somebody else going to be unhappy with me? Because
Mm.
I know, and I think you do as well, Katie, when you do live your life like that, you are miserable.
Yeah.
And so many people are living their lives through the lens of somebody else, through the hopes of somebody else, through the expectations, through the limits. And actually, they are quite unhappy. And for me, let's get to those people. Let's give them the thought. Let's get them curious about whether they could change what they're doing and have that courage to be themselves. And maybe be a bit outside their box.
Absolutely. I had a client, she'll remain nameless for the sake of, I don't want to put her name out there, but I had a client she was really trying to fit in, really trying to be like the people around her, but it was really just making her very unhappy. And working with me, one of the lines that really flipped it for her, I was going, you are a unicorn in a field of horses. Why are you trying to be a horse? There's nothing wrong with being a horse. Horses are great. We love horses. I'm not knocking horses, but you're not a horse, you're a unicorn. And it was like, It was like, yeah. It was like, you're basically, what I mean by that is you're hiding your magic. You're hiding your power. You're hiding what makes you unique just to fit in with other people. And there's nothing, I'm not saying those people are bad or wrong or whatever, but you're not them and they're not you. And that's okay.
I love that. I'd love somebody to tell me that I'm a unicorn in a load of horses. I would see that as a compliment now. Whereas I think, probably back in the day, I would have been desperately wanting to, as you say, fit in. And because it is part of our makeup, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're younger, because like you say, you don't know who you are. You haven't really got a strong sense of self and identity. And so it's easier, I suppose, in some ways to assimilate and to blend in with other people. I think that comes sometimes with maturity. I think that you get more of a sense of who you are and you have less flips to give as you get older. About what other people really think about you, because life's too short and precious to, you can't spend your whole life worrying about other people. Jesus.
Yeah, it is a great realization, though. I think when you do reach it, like you say, you do hear a lot of people say, I used to worry about this more now, because now I don't, because I've realized, they're better at putting boundaries in, or they're just better at putting themselves first.
Absolutely. So on the journey you've been on, like you say, you've been doing this for a long time. What's been your biggest lesson so far, and what's it really taught you?
I guess my biggest lesson has always been, I spent a lot of time thinking that it was other people's fault. So I blamed my parents, I blamed my life really on why things were like they were.
Yeah.
But actually realizing that, they haven't necessarily done the right things. The biggest lesson for me was realizing that actually I could take responsibility for myself, and I needed to do that. And I think that was a real big pivotal moment in my life. It didn't happen it wasn't a 1 minute moment. It was a sort of period of time. But it was very much, I can see now why I've been putting myself in these situations, because I've been not looking at me, and I've been trying to find someone else to either fix me, or a relationship was going to fix me, or a situation. And even when I started training as a counsellor, I know I was looking for answers then, which I got, but I recognised I was looking for them externally, and I needed to, look internally.
Yeah, absolutely. But I really resonate with that. And I think a lot of people watching this will resonate with that. I think a lot of us have been taught, especially women, that it's not feminine to be powerful, right? So that we should be scared of our own power, and to give our power away to the people around us because they know more than we do. And actually, it's not easy to tap into that space within initially if you've always been taught it's not safe to do so. And yet that's where all your real answers lie, isn't it?
100%. In my book, I call it the resit class. So I used to be back in the same kind of similar scenario, thinking, why is this? When you hear yourself say, why is this keep happening to me?
Mm.
If you are somebody who's listening and find yourself saying that to yourself or to your friend, why does this keep happening to me? There is your gate to really think about, what are you doing? What is happening? Why are you attracting these people in who there's a similar thing? Yes, they've got their behaviors. Yes, they might be insecure, or they might be whatever they're doing. But actually, what is it for you? And when I got hold of that, it really started to change everything, really, and start to make proper changes that are more sustainable. And they're sustainable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for me, the shift was not, why is this happening to me, but I realized this was happening for me. That was my shift, because I was using it then to help other people, because I realized it was giving me, I was able to have experiences, and I was able to have wisdom, and I was able to have clarity on things because of the experiences that I've been through. And that then I felt more empowered in that space rather than a victim to circumstance.
Yeah. Similar then, isn't it? Because I definitely felt a victim to people or to situations. Then you bounce around feeling annoyed with them, feel cross with yourself. And it's just ever perpetuating, really. So I think just stepping out of that. And I think the other thing that was so key for me is to really think about the people that I was surrounded by. I had to do a bit of a cleanse of some of the people that were in my life at the time, and really thinking about who do I want in my corner. And that was also
harder, right?
Yeah. Well, it is, because it sounds mean or a bit uncomfortable to say, I sort of outgrew people. But I definitely felt like I had to leave certain people or certain situations and look for people who could see me, who could accept me for who I was, and obviously for me to be able to do the same back. I think I've always been fairly non-judgmental as a person. I've always accepted everyone for who they are. And part of my challenge was that I knew a lot of people who were in my life weren't doing that to me. And that's what made it really, really uncomfortable.
No, absolutely. I think it comes a lot from lack mentality. So, when we say that, everyone thinks about money, of course. But lack mentality is you saying that there is not enough of something for you. So I think people hold on to the people in their lives, even if they're not healthy for them. It's not a healthy connection, because they worry that if I let this person go, there'll be nobody else. Right. So it's like they have to. Because, and I'm like, how many people on this planet now? 8 billion people, pretty much. And you're like, it's not easy, this stuff. This stuff is not straightforward or overnight, but that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. But it's like, you have to start somewhere. And for me, I think having that honest conversation with yourself about saying, is this a good connection for me? Is this helping me? Is this adding to my life in a good way? Is always the starting point,
I think so. I think having relationships was something that I definitely needed to do that in, not just see a relationship as something that was going to give me some sort of connection or a sense of love. It was like, is it enhancing my life? Is this person bringing something more? I often ask myself questions like, what do I need to do more of, and what do I need to do less of here in this situation? So if something hasn't worked out, asking those two questions, or even what do I need to stop doing altogether in that moment. So if you're in the reset class, if you're back in the same, asking yourself, what do I need to do more of? What do I need to do less of? There'll be so much wealth in the answers that come from those questions.
Absolutely. And to do it from a very non-judgmental space. Like, I always say this to people, like, if you're like having reflection time and having these conversations, and then whatever comes up, you then judge yourself for the answer, all you're doing is adding more rubbish to the table that you've got to work through. Like, you can't be honest with yourself and judge yourself for the answer. It's like, it's just a starting point, If this is your baseline and it's not great, well, the only way you can go is up, right? But you have to know what your starting point is.
Definitely. And I think that's where people don't pause and think about, almost they're judging their past. They're not just pausing, thinking, who am I because of this? That's something else that was a really freeing moment for me, was rather than feel like I was defined by what had happened, I needed to say, okay, it is part of who I am. it is part of who I have become today, but I need to work out what have I gained because of it.
Yeah.
And I think
Absolutely.
pausing and reflecting and thinking, okay, well, who am I because I've had these challenges or because I've had these people in my life? Then you can start to build the who you are from there.
Absolutely. I like that. That's great. So if you could go back, say you've got like a DeLorean parked in the driveway and you can travel back in time, what would you go back and say to your 18-year-old self?
Oh gosh, I'd love to give her a big hug and tell her she's loved. I definitely felt on the outside, I was very chatty, and as I've always been, I think that's been part of my personality, but it was probably part of my defense mechanism back in the day. But I think just felt very lonely, even though I was looked like on the outside lots of fun, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to feel love. I didn't know what love looks like. So I think just to know that actually you can do self-love. If I'd been able to do that at 18, which is a big tall order, we know, but if I'd known what I know now, then maybe some of the things might not have happened. But then they all happened for the right reason, didn't they? So
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? You know, you think if I could go back, would I change anything? But then you wouldn't be the person that you are now, and you wouldn't be where you are now. It has all happened for you, even the really crappy stuff. I don't know. It is a hard question. I think to go back and give yourself, not necessarily like don't do this or do this, but just to say, give yourself that positive reinforcement and that love and that compassion and that strength. I think just means that whatever does come up on that journey, you feel like you're better equipped to deal with it, perhaps.
I think so. I think it's, if I could have said to myself to trust myself more. Because we all talk about our minds, but we also talk about our intuition and our heart knowledge and memory, etc. Looking back, if I'd been able to just know that actually I can make that decision, I should do that thing for me, rather than feel worried that other people are going to be unhappy with me, then that trusting self, because there's definitely been times when I look back and think, if I really listened to myself there, even though it's given me who I am today, those experiences, I know there's many times where I know I have done the wrong thing. I know I've gone ahead and it hasn't really been right for me, but I've gone along with it. And I think just, trusting yourself a bit more as well. I think, we all can still learn from that. We don't have to be young to still trust our feelings about things and just think, actually, why am I saying yes to this? Why am I agreeing to this? I don't want to do this. Why am I doing it? And making sure that unless you are stopping yourself doing things and actually know you do need to dig in and go on and have a go at something, if you're not doing that and people are asking you to do things you don't want to do, don't do them.
Absolutely. In life, if it's not a hell yes, then it's got to be a hell no. And maybe it's not a yes. Maybe it's actually in that space, maybe it's a no. Like, do the things that light you up. Don't compromise yourself just to make other people happy, but you're sitting there wishing you were at home with your pajamas on.
Exactly. And feel okay about saying it. Most people who are kind of in that space themselves will just go, okay, I respect that. I respect your decision. If somebody's got a problem with it and you, that's their problem.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And no is a full sentence. No is a full sentence. I find that people find it really hard to do that because it requires a 3-act play as to why they've said no. But if you really struggle, I found one that works for me now is that doesn't align with me at this time. Right. So it's not like I'm not saying no forever, and it could be in here, but to say out loud, that doesn't align with me at this time. It feels freer because you can't argue with that.
Yeah, exactly. It is a no, isn't it? That's a full sentence.
Exactly. You're like, oh, okay. So who do you think, I was going to ask you 3, but I'm more interested for you. Who do you think has been the most inspirational person on your journey thus far?
There's so many people who've been along on this journey with me, apart from myself. I think I have slowly but surely shown myself that I can inspire myself by pushing and working so hard. I love working with anyone or hearing anyone's stories who have pushed and worked hard. You inspire me. Lots of people who I know have been on these journeys. I think one of the people who I've always followed, though, who's a real guru of mine, there's two. One is Brené Brown. And I love Brené because she's super honest. You know, and I like to think that I am as honest. She will tell you how hard it is. She will tell you what it is. But then the other person who's completely different to that, although is very honest, is Wayne Dyer. Love all of his work. And I think, again, both of those people have studied behaviors for decades, but they've done it because they started out not knowing themselves. And that's so for me, it's anyone who has done that journey, really. But it can be, you know, my clients inspire me regularly. Anybody, people who just, you know, message you and say, hey, I've made this decision for myself. I'm like, go.
Absolutely. I love that. Did you watch, I'm sure you have, did you watch Brené Brown's Call to Courage on Netflix? I recommend it to everybody. If you haven't seen it, it's still there. Just go and search it up, and honestly, it's like 40 minutes of your life. But God, it's transformative. I swear it is.
The other one that she's done that I like is the vulnerability one.
She did a TED talk about
vulnerability. TED talk, yeah, that's brilliant. It's genius, absolute genius. She turns over vulnerability to courage.
Yeah,
because to put anything out there, you've got to be courageous. So yes, you might feel vulnerable, but you put it out there because you're courageous. And I love her work. I like the sort of straight talking, don't pretend, let's reframe. What does she call her? Her breakdown is a spiritual awakening.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. It's funny. I remember actually when you said it, when people say, oh, well, you know, if you're going to work in these big industries and stuff, and to take risks and take chances, and she talks to them, and she talks about vulnerability, and she says you see them like physically recoil from the word. Like I'll be courageous, but I'm not being vulnerable. And she said, through my research, you can't have one without the other. You can't be courageous and brave without being vulnerable, because the definition of vulnerability is that you don't know what the outcome is. Right, so you're putting yourself out there and taking a risk, but you can't guarantee how that's going to go. So you're being vulnerable in that space, right? But we see vulnerability as like this, you know, emotionally crying breakdown thing, as though that's a bad thing in itself anyway. I really love her because, like you say, it's all about reframing mental health and seeing that actually there's great power in there and great connection in there when you do reframe it. And I'm sure you see that as well.
Definitely. And the other thing I think is brilliant about Brené is because she does do the research as well. So she's not just, I don't want to say just writing books, but she shows us all, me too. She shows us all that we're not alone. Yes, we're all unique. And I'm, you know, always saying we are all unique. We cannot guarantee that somebody else will expect or feel the same as you about something. However, there is so many things as humans that are similar in our patterns and in our thoughts. And I think hearing that, and that's why these kind of podcasts are so powerful, because it helps people go, oh, wow, well, if they're talking about it, then it mustn't just be me. And in that moment, you will feel freer, because you might not know what you're going to do, or you don't know how you're going to do it, but just know that others do feel the same as you. And I think that isolating, I mean, when I first started this journey, there was no internet. I was in libraries trying to find books to try and make sense of things. I didn't know. I did feel very alone with it all because I didn't have the connection. We didn't have podcasts and YouTube and all these wonderful things that we can look into now if we want to.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I are of a certain age, and I do remember it really well, trying to find, you know, what was it, Encarta CD at school? Oh, God, yeah, it's just got flashbacks. I got trauma. So, obviously, you've mentioned it kind of in passing that you have written books thus far. Do you have plans to write any more as you move forward?
Well, my offering has always been, I've got a book that is available to help people make sense of themselves. I've got a relationship book. And then where I spend a lot of my time is in teams, helping people understand themselves and each other. And those three areas are kind of where I spend a lot of my time. So I do wonder whether, with everything, with all my experiences of working with teams, so it would be a good idea to start to think about getting all of my knowledge, etc., into a book. Having said that, I loved writing with you and actually just being part of chapters. I think there's something quite special about only having to write one chapter, but it coming together in a collaboration like that. And I really enjoyed that. So I think there's always definitely room for more of those kind of things.
Yeah. Alison wrote a chapter in my Rise anthology, and which is all about women's stories. I laugh because it's definitely easier to write a chapter than it is to write a whole book.
100%. So maybe I'll just keep writing lots of chapters and then put it on. I mean, somebody did ask me, that's the book, that chapter that I have written for you in your book. A few people have said to me, would you consider writing the rest of it? So obviously with every bit of it, there is a whole more, because it was one chapter. And whether that is something that could be explored, I don't know.
Maybe. Watch this space, right?
Yeah,
watch this space. I'm sure there'll be more to come somewhere. So obviously this has been such a wonderful conversation. I knew it would be, because talking about mental health is something that I'm incredibly passionate about too. Is there anything perhaps that you would have liked to talk about, or anything, question that I didn't ask you that you would like to kind of bring up now?
I think it is for anyone listening, if again, it's thinking about what I would like to have heard myself when I was younger, or whatever age, wherever you all are on this journey that people listening in today, is about finding the right things for you. And that could be so many different things. Some people go off and do extreme sports, and then some people don't do that. They do the complete opposite. And I think it is just pausing and taking your time. I always think life, especially if you're going to do self-development, is about, it's like a jigsaw. It's about looking at what are all the bits. And how do we do a jigsaw? We do a jigsaw one piece at a time. So, I think we do get overwhelmed with all the noise and all the things that we should or shouldn't be doing. And I think for me, it's just looking individually at what is missing, or what could you start, and just be encouraged by that and not feel overwhelmed.
I love that, because it is. I think like we said before, we have this pressure to do everything and be everything and to fill our time with all these different things. But I know on my own journey, it's if you just pick one and, like you say, and start with that and then see how it goes. Lots of kindness and patience in that space. And then when you're ready and you feel able to, then you can add something else into the equation. But it really is, like you say, this step-by-step process. Don't try and run a marathon before you've even learned how to walk.
Exactly. And have fun. Find ways to have fun and listen to podcasts like this. Fill your ears with good, healthy, positive conversation. There's an awful lot of negative noise out there. And from a human brain perspective, when you listen to some of this stuff, your mind will think it's happening to you. So be careful what you listen to.
I saw a thing this morning, and actually just reminded me, it's like before the internet, before social media, we may have heard like one or two negative stories per day. Now we are bombarded 24/7 by these like negative stories that keep coming out. And it doesn't have to be the news and global stuff. It can be on an individual, personal basis. Your brain can't handle it. Your brain goes into trauma response. It goes into fight or flight mode. Yeah. Because constantly we're all on edge. And that's because we're bombarded with this noise all the time. And so it's really, I find that for me, I don't step away from social media altogether because it's my business and a lot of my clients are on social media. But I do now give myself almost time. I'm here during this time, and then the rest of the time I'm not here. And I find that helps me then to kind of monitor how my own mental health as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? Making some sort of a schedule, a plan, a boundary with yourself, with how much you're going to have a look. And I think the other thing, just to add to that, is if you are going to have a mooch around social media, don't then tell yourself, oh, I've wasted a lot of time if you've done it. Just say, right, I did it. I did an hour and I messed about on social media. Do it, be okay with it, and then move on. Don't be beating yourself up because you've now wasted whatever you think you've now wasted. Or don't do it in the first place.
Absolutely. And make sure everybody that you're following is inspirational and
Yeah.
motivational and uplifts you. And you know, but the unfriend and the block buttons, they're there for a reason. And if it's somebody close to you and you don't want to do that because you don't want to cause ructions, you know, because you know people can be like, then you can literally like choose to quieten them. You can hide them for a certain amount of time. So it's your mental health is the most important thing. Don't allow yourself to be privy to all this negativity when you don't need to be.
Yeah, we have a choice. We
Yeah,
have a choice.
always,
Take it.
always. I love that. Thank you, Alison. So where can people find you online? We talk about social media.
Yeah, exactly. When you're limiting yourself, make sure you can check me out. So I'm on Instagram, Alison Two Minds. I'm on Facebook, Two Minds UK. I mean, I've got a website which you'll probably find everything from there, which is www.2-minds.co.uk. It's probably in the notes below.
Go have a look down, but finish the podcast and then go and have a look.
And yeah, exactly. And I've got a podcast called Mental Wealth, which has been running for a few months now. So we'll definitely get Katie onto that. Get you on as a guest.
Fabulous, fabulous. Alison, thank you so much, sweetheart. Like I say, I knew this would be a great chat and it was fascinating. So I got so much out of it, and I'm sure everybody else watching this has also had some really important takeaways. So just thank you, genuinely.
Thank you for allowing me into your space.
Oh, bless you. Well, thank you guys for watching this video. There'll be more videos to come, absolutely. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and we will definitely see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.